Okay, we're going to tie a fly taken from Hatch Guides for Western Streams. It's a book written by Jim Schollmeyer, and this is a Hexagenia wiggle nymph. It's a good drake nymph imitation, tied in whatever color is appropriate, and in this coloration it is for hex nymph. You see the large hook I've got in the vise. I want to make sure that it's at least 1.5 times the length of the hook that is going to become the front hook. This is a two-piece fly, and you see it is at least twice the shank. I really only need about 1.5 times the shank length. This hook is going to get cut off after we tie this first portion of the fly. So I'm going to start this thread the size of the eye behind the eye. Right back here and trim that off. Wrap back to what I think is the appropriate end point. Having reached that, I'll rotate this up and make it a little easier for me to check. I'll get my other hook here and check the length of that. I wanted at least a 1.25 to 1.5 the length of this shank, and that's going to be fine for length. So I'm going to tie in my tinsel or fine wire here that I'm going to use for the rib. I want to put that right on the side of the hook, so I'll rotate up to make it easy access to my tie-in point. This is a fairly stiff wire, so I can just hold it up here and then trap it against the side and wrap forward. And to get up here, it's a slippery wire, so to get up here to make sure that it can't ever come out from underneath it, I'll just fold this wire over and trap it down and then just twist it off. And we've got our ribbing material tied in. With that tied in, I'll see if I can find some dubbing. We want a real spiky, hairy dubbing. This is hare's ear dubbing. I'm going to rotate this up, clear the way, get that hook assembly out of the way so I can get up fairly close to the hook shank with my dubbing. I'm going to hold the dubbing in my right hand with the bobbin and dub with the thumb and forefinger of my left hand. It's offhand dubbing. It's quite easy to learn, and it's pretty handy because if you need to add dubbing, you've got your dubbing right there in your right hand all the time instead of setting it down and then picking it up again. But I've got enough dubbing on here now. I'm going to start wrapping to the back. I'll use up the bare thread that I have getting to the rear of the hook, and then I'll just start wrapping forward. You can see this is fairly spiky dubbing, and I'm going to pick it out some more later on. Now get up here towards the front a little quicker. There we are. And I got lucky. I ran out of dubbing just about the right time. If I had some excess on there, I would have just picked it off. Put just a hair more on though. There. Good. And with that done, I've got to put some tails on this fly, and I want to pick this out before I do that because the tail is a little bit different on this fly, this section of the fly. The tail is an ostrich plume that runs down the whole length of the shank. So if you're going to pick it out, now's a good time to do that. Whoop. Try not to get that wire too caught up. There, I'd say that's pretty well picked out. Just around, get this wire back up in the material clip. See if I can find an ostrich plume. There we go. And those are the hurls that we're going to use to form the stripe down the side of the body and form the tails. Now I got this hook in the position that it's going to ride in with that ring eye flat like that. So I'm going to roll it up and tie this tail material in on what appears now to be the top and bottom of the hook, but when this is cut and attached to the other fly, these tail sections and this stripe going down the side will be on the side of the nymph body. So attach those, I'll cut those off, the butt sections here, and just leave those two hanging loose on the back, and I'll attach a couple more on this side. I want them to be approximately the same length. I'll use the pinch technique to gather them right there and get them onto the hook. Another wrap or two. Trim that off. And I'll smooth this up a little bit. You see this ring eye, how that is a straight eye going out like that. And these appear to be on the top and the bottom, these hurls we just put on, but they are going to ride on the side of the fly. Because I've got some wrapping to do and some pulling to do, and I'm going to use the wire. I want to get this thread out of the way, so I'll put it out in my bobbin cradle. And with that out of the way, we'll rotate into a comfortable position here. I'll get this wire ready to wrap with it. Then I'll wet my fingers and stroke these ostrich plumes towards the rear. Try to keep them right on what is now the top and bottom of the hook. I'll make a wire wrap around here. Just do a loose wrap, and I can cinch it up if I'm sure these are right. Looks to be. I'll make another wrap around then. They appear to be okay. So here it goes. And I'll just try to keep them on the side, keep even tension on this wire wrapping up, and this rib will serve to protect these and keep this back section together. Get up here to the front, I just take my thread out of the bobbin cradle. Trap that wire. And we're pretty close to done with this this half of the fly. Nip that off. We just shape a nice smooth head here. Do my whip finish. 1, 2, 3 wraps. Snug it up good. Trim that off, and we'll see what we got here. Okay, get in here with a pair of diagonal wire cutters. Cut that just beyond the end of the fly. Yeah. You can see the end, and there's our tails out there. Phase 1. To stripe down the side and get the tails flared out in the back. Just what we wanted. You can see that's going to ride like that. Okay, so we want this fly to sink, and so I've got some non-lead, if you will, or lead-free wire. I'm going to take the length of that and make 8 or 10 wraps on the hook shank here. And then to thicken up the thorax on this, I'm just going to make a couple wraps back up on here. I'll nip that off. Release my hackle pliers and smooth this end down. And with that done, I'll start my thread, and I'm going to build a little ramp of thread going up onto this material and then in back of it. See how I wrap my thread down over the back and then kind of pulled that wire to the front. Now I'll build the ramp. You don't have to cover this stuff 100% like you had to with the lead that we used to use. The lead would bleed through all the material and discolor it this lead-free lead, if you will. I think it's nickel. This stuff doesn't seem to bleed through the material like the lead did. So I'm going to take some 2X tippet material. They say to use somewhere around 12 pound, and that 2X is 12 pound. I'm just going to attach it on the side here. I'm not too worried about how I get it on or where it's positioned, because it's so slippery you can move it around and get it correct anytime you want. Kind of get it up on the side. Grab the piece that we have already made. We'll take that and thread it onto this monofilament. So I can find the end here. Get it through there, and you can see now why this is going to ride in with the ring eye sideways like this, because we're coming off one side of the hook and onto the other, and that makes that back hook ride with the eye in a vertical position. So I'll make a couple wraps around here. Again, I'm not worried at all about where this monofilament goes because it's so slippery I can move it around. I'll just pull it right back up into position. Rotate this down so I'm looking at it from the right angle and just pull it in. Now you want to get it in so that it's got plenty of freedom for movement. It can rock up and down and around, but you don't want it too loose or too far back. That seems to be about right. Something a little bigger than an eye size. Fold that stuff back and make a couple wraps. Now those couple of wraps coupled with a couple more wraps on top of the material make a locking mechanism that will keep that from slipping out. Cut those off. Remember, there's no hook in this back half of the Nymph, so nothing's going to be tugging real hard on this. They're going to take this whole Nymph in and get hooked on this hook that we're working on now. There, and that's what the back half will look like. Now we're going to do some dubbing on this forward section and get that hook jaw assembly out of the way. Dub enough of this in so that we can wind up to where we're going to tie in the wing case. See if I can get that wiggle nymph body to stay in here. It's hard to grab just these hurl pieces with the material clip, but that might hold. And we use up our bare thread, go into the back of the hook. Start wrapping forward here. Doesn't look like we're leaving any gaps anywhere. Now reach over here and grab a piece of turkey tail. This white tip turkey tail, we're going to just separate a piece out here. This is going to become our wing case. Now I've separated out a section. I'm going to cut it off, and I'll show you the difference between the different ends of this piece that I've cut off. Out here in the tip, these pieces are pretty soft, pretty flexible. They have little hairs on them that let the fibers marry back together. See, I separate these. If I grab them and I wiggle and shake a little bit and rub them against each other, they form back together. Kind of self-healing, if you will. Now this section is the section that you want to use and you want to fold because of those features, the fact that it's flexible and it grabs back together. And I want to check this and make sure that it's about to hook gap in width. Stroke those fibers again, make sure they're all back together. And they are, and it looks good, so we got to wrap a couple more wraps forward and then we can tie that wing case material in. I want to wrap these wraps and just make kind of a soft bed to lay that wing case against. Tighten it, dubbing up just a hair here. Okay, now there's the end we squared off that we want to fold. These are the coarse. You can see how much thicker those fibers are on the far end of that. We'll take this piece, we'll wrap up, show you how I got that thread to go to the back like that. If you spin this counterclockwise, your thread will always curl towards the rear of the hook or towards my thumbnail. That's just what we want this to do a soft loop, and then we can come down and snug this up. Get a chance to move it around a little if we need to. It's in the right position, so I'll just wrap up now and trap it so it'll stay there. Wrap down off it and let's see how we did here. Looks like it's going to fold over nicely. So now what we got to do is find some more dubbing here. Spin that on and get it ready. Got a short dubbing noodle here. I'll use up that bare empty thread, getting back to the wing case. Wrap forward, that was a little loose, I'll tighten that up. Nice to be able to spin that head out of the way to get my fingers in there to work on that. And then we just grab this and fold it over. Now, I didn't lacquer this this quill material. A lot of people, and I'm one of them actually, often spray wing quills as well as turkey tails in with a clear acrylic lacquer, and it makes them a lot easier to work with and prevents the little splits like that split that you can see right in the middle of that case now. But we're going to live with what we got there. We'll trim that off, form a head, and we don't have a rib on this forward portion, so we don't have to worry about wrapping that. Get my whip finish tool here, my dubbing tool, and pick that out. So we do have to worry about one more thing, and that is putting some legs on this fly. Now, often people just stop at this point because this is such a spiky dubbing that they let the dubbing that they've picked out serve as legs. But the actual pattern does call for Hungarian partridge, so we will go ahead and put Hungarian partridge legs on this thing. Everything looks good. Actually, I have to trim some of that out of the way to make room for my partridge legs so they can lay properly. Here's a partridge feather. I'll just pull some fibers down off that. See the nice barring on those. Grab those tips and pull them off. Cut off that little portion of quill that came with it. Check my length here. Nip this off now so that when I tie this on I don't have to try to get in there with my scissor points and cut this. Bring that thread up close. Again, do that clockwise spin so that the thread curls in the way I want it to. And that's a loose wrap there, and then this tighter wrap that I'm going to follow with will push that the rest of the way up into the center position. The thread just pulls it up there to the middle. That's where we want it. Kind of flare it out. And like I said, a lot of people skip this step. They just leave those picked out hare's mask fibers sticking down and call that good for legs. But to properly do the pattern, this is the leg material you're supposed to use. This is a great pattern during the hex hatch or prior to the hex hatch. I use it every just about around the 4th of July. We have our hex hatch around here, and I use it every year. Okay, I think we're done, and this is what it looks like. Again, this is from Hatch Guides for Western Streams, a book written by Jim Schollmeyer, and this particular fly works across the country from one coast to the other. It's just a good drake imitation in whatever color is appropriate. So there you have it, a wiggle nymph tied using rotary fly tying techniques.